Okay, welcome back. In today's episode, I'm not actually going to be repairing anything. I'm going to be modding this Atari 4 switch with a standard AV mod I got off eBay, and that's the link to the website on the bag there. Okay, first things first, I'm going to just test the console, see if everything is working. In this case, it does work. And the RF signal over the years tends to degrade on these old Atari consoles, but in this case, this one actually doesn't seem too bad. It's actually quite crisp for being as old as it is. But even still, the AV quality is still better. It's far superior, so I'm going to mod it anyway. So I'm going to actually be modding the Atari 4 switch black console, commonly referred to as the Vader console because it resembles Darth Vader's helmet. Now keep in mind there were many revisions to the Atari 2600, so this mod may or may not work on your console, or it may still be compatible, but the architecture, some components, locations may be different, so just keep that in mind when you're doing mod of your own. So to open up this console, it's just 4 screws. Simple enough. The console isn't heavy, the inside isn't much to it, but of course this console is over 40 years old, so you know the shells tend to glue together a bit, but eventually you do. It's not hard, it should come apart eventually. Now these 4 circular things, they go over the switches, and I did set them aside to reuse them. They're not really necessary, and in the end I actually forgot to add them back. So here's the RF jack. They actually put it on the inside of the console. Since we're not going to be using RF anymore, we could just remove the cable completely, and now we can work on the board. Okay, before we go any further on the console, let's actually assemble the kit. So this kit should come with 2 pieces, 6-inch pieces of wire. Now each one of these wires have 4 leads. I'll show you that in a second. It should come with 2 resistors, 1 transistor, a piece of double-sided tape, 3 RCA jacks, and the board. And it's pretty simple. I'm going to show you how to assemble it right now. So this kit is actually complete with a nice silk screen here, and it tells you where all the components go and what each lead corresponds to. So now I have 2 resistors here. Now I'm not great with resistors, to be honest with you. Now the color codes tell you the exact values of them, and I never can memorize them. You can actually look up the color codes online if you want to, but instead of looking them up, I'll just use a multimeter. I'll set it to resistance mode, and I can tell that the orange red is a 3.3K resistor. It says 3.2, but it's close enough, 3.3K. And the red is a 2.2K. Of course it reads 2.15, but that's close enough. So now that I know the value of this resistor, I can just feed it through these vias and solder them in place. Now keep in mind, if you're looking up color codes online, you may be a little bit confused with a gold or silver stripe on your resistors. That's your tolerance band. So just when you're looking up a code, start with the color opposite of the tolerance band, which is usually indicated in either gold or silver. So I bend the resistor legs out a bit so the resistors can hold in place while I solder. Now I don't use flux in this case here because my solder that I use has flux in the core, and they create a decent joint without it, but you can use flux if you want. So with everything soldered in place, I'm actually going to take my flush cuts and just trim the legs here. So next I'll add the transistor. Now keep in mind the transistor has like a half moon shape, and on the silk screen of the board you'll see that it corresponds correctly with the half moon shape of the resistor. So the middle leg actually goes towards the rounded side. So I'll bend it out a bit and keep the side legs straight. And I'll just solder it in like I did with the resistors. This is self-explanatory, it's not too hard. One thing to note, it's easy to bridge these joints here, so always double check your work, make sure nothing is bridged. So now I'll take my wire strippers here and just peel back the jacketing. Now the vendor already pre-stripped the individual wires, so that's good. So if you're following the instructions on this video, what I like to do is feed, starting from the left side of this board, top to bottom, blue, yellow, red, and black. Now blue is audio, yellow is video, red is 5 volt, and black is ground. Now you may sometimes get bridging, so here's how you clear that up. Just a dab and it clears up. So for the video and audio out, you don't need 4 wires, so I'll just peel one out. So once again, if you're following along on the left side of this board, from top to bottom, yellow, blue, and black. So yellow, once again, is video, blue is audio, and black is ground. So once the wires are in place, I'm going to take some flush cuts and just trim the excess. And your board is done. So now onto the console. So I have to get under this shield here. So there are 4 tabs that you have to pry up, and then the shield should just come right off. So I'll take some needle nose pliers and just bend the tabs up. Now this shield is just to clean up the RF signal. It's no longer needed. You can throw it away if you want to. In this video I don't actually throw it away because it doesn't hurt to have it. So I just put it back. Also, there's some metallic tape that goes across the switches. I believe that's also for grounding, and that you can remove, and that you don't actually have to put back, so don't worry about it, just get rid of it. So the first thing we do is locate the RF module. Now it has a small board that comes from it, and you can just clip the 5 leads, the 5 little legs that come from the board, and just pry them up. They're no longer needed. Now even though this board is out of circuit and it really shouldn't matter, but out of habit I always make sure when I pry up these legs they're not touching each other. So we actually have to clear these vias here. So directly underneath the board, if we flip it over, we can get easier access to them. So clearing up these vias are a bit tricky. Now I could use my desoldering gun, but I don't want to actually risk sucking up that little piece of the component leg into my desoldering gun and causing a jam or more problems. So I did try the piece of desoldering braid and it didn't work. So ultimately I did add more solder, and I actually used a hand pump. Now I barely ever use this tool, but in this case it actually worked really well. So to access these vias, these legs are actually getting in the way, so I just clipped them shorter. So if you're following instructions on this video, remember the black was the ground, the red was the 5 volt, and the yellow was the video. So you want the ground, the first one from the left, the 5 volt is the middle one, the third one from the left, and the yellow is the the video that's fourth from the left or second from the right. Okay, so for the blue wire, this is the audio, and you could actually pull the audio signal from the end of this resistor here, and it's right next to the green component. Now keep in mind, the Atari had many different variants, so that green component could look different on your board, but as long as you're pulling the audio signal from the end of this resistor, you should be okay regardless of what the color of the resistor is or what the component next to it is. Now, it is bridged. It's okay that it's bridged because the resistor and that blue component, the green component, they're in continuity with each other, so it's alright that they're bridged. So finally I have to remove this transistor. Now on my board it's labeled Q202, but on your board it could be labeled differently. Just keep in mind it's the transistor right next to the red cylindrical component. I believe that's the RF adjustment. So just clip the transistor closest to the RF adjustment. You don't want to clip any other transistor on the board. So one extra thing I like to do is wrap this board in electrical tape just to make sure that it doesn't come loose or bounce around against something on the inside of this console and short up against something. So it's not pretty, but it'll just give you that little extra bit of protection. So here I have a post-it note, and I'm actually going to create a template here. So what I'm going to do is space out the RCA jacks 9/16 of an inch apart. I know it's a bizarre number, but since on the bottom of this Atari there's plenty of clearance, plenty of space, and I really just don't want the RCA jacks to be too close, so I just give them an extra 1/16 of an inch extra space. So here's the template in place. Now I got a ruler here, and how I lined this up is I started the middle hole right in the center of 4.5 inches apart, which would be 2.25 inches. So there you see that the middle hole is actually perfect at 2.25 inches. Now some people can do this with a drill or create a pilot hole and then start with a drill. I don't want to pull out the Dremel or a drill or anything. So I'm actually going to take the long route, and what I do is I burn a pilot hole with my soldering iron all the way through, and then I'm actually going to take a file and open up these holes with a small file. Now this is a little more time consuming, but it worked for me, and it's less tools that you need to actually complete this mod, so I hope it helps someone else. So I do most of this filing off camera. So I just make the holes, I start off small and then I widen them just slowly but surely. I don't want to go too far to the left, too far to the right. Make sure to keep in the center and make sure that the hole is as circular as possible. So with trial and error, I didn't want to open them too wide. You got to be careful when you're using a drill or even a file. You don't want to make the hole too wide, then you can't mount the jack. So in this case it came out perfect. And so I'll add the washer and the nut, and I can actually tighten this one in place. So when you're done, it should look like this. Now I really like how this turned out. They're perfectly aligned, they're perfectly spaced, and it looks like factory. So you should have 3 wires left coming out of the mod board. One is ground, another is video, and the other one's audio. So what I'm going to do here in the video, it's self-explanatory. It's just to make it look a little bit nicer, but you don't have to do this because nothing is going to short out in this little area here. But I guess this video is going to have to explain itself. What I'm doing is I'm actually going to try to put the jacket back on the end of this wire, just so I can keep the just to protect the copper a little bit from shorting, even though it's never going to short, but I just like to make it look a little bit nicer. So here you can get an idea of what I'm doing. You don't have to do it like this. You can remove the jacket completely. It'll probably be much easier for you. I'm just doing this to make it look a little bit nicer. But as you can see, the jacket melts away easily anyway. So now the left and right audio, the reason why the blue wire goes to the yellow and the red lead is because the left and right audio, they're the same channel. So there's not really stereo from what I understand. It's just the same sound that's going to come out of your left and right speaker. So, and the yellow, remember, the yellow is video, so the yellow goes all the way to the yellow lead, the yellow RCA jack. So finally, the ground, these rings on top of these jacks, they're the ground. So what I'm going to do is just twist them a bit so I can just slip the ground wire right through instead of having to weave them up and down. So the same thing, I'm going to just try to make it a little more presentable. So just you can follow along. You don't have to do it like this. You can once again remove the jacketing completely. I just do this just to make it a little bit more presentable, but it's really not necessary. Now always double check your work and make sure everything is a solid joint. As you can see right here, this was loose, and if I just closed it up, I wouldn't get any video. So just double check, make sure everything is soldered correctly. Okay, before I close everything up, I want to test it out, and as you can see, it works. So I can close this up and I'll show it off one more time at the end of this video. So here's something I noticed, that there's a post that you could actually wedge these white wires in between, and they hold reasonably well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wedge it in this corner, and it may fall, but I don't think it will, because this is the bottom side. It's supposed to lay on this side anyway, so it's not like it's going to be upside down and it could fall through gravity. So I'm going to leave it like this. As you can see, I just wedge it in this little post, and it fits well. So as I close up this console, I may as well give some updates. Now I know these videos have been less and less frequent. I know personally I haven't been seeking anything. I haven't been acquiring anything. Things have been busy at work, so I really don't want to. I can't really post too frequently. I'm going to try to get at least a video out a month. This video here personally was a recommendation from my friend Robert Lewis. He wanted to do a mod on his console, so I really hope this guide helps him. It's not hard. It's not too difficult. And I suspect that I covered everything that there is to cover. Now if I missed anything, please leave a comment down below, like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody. And once again, I appreciate everybody for watching.